Before we dive into these scary stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy true horror content every week. I was never a fan of old hotels, but when you're traveling on a budget, you take what you can get. This one, the Magnolia Tower, had seen better days. It was a 6-story relic of the 1920s, with ornate brass fixtures and a lobby that smelled faintly of lemon polish and mildew. The online reviews were mixed, to say the least, but I figured for one night I could deal with a creaky elevator or peeling wallpaper. The receptionist handed me a key card with a polite but distant smile. "You're in room 504. The elevator is just to your right," she said. I glanced toward the elevator she mentioned. It was one of those old gated ones with a tarnished brass door and a dim light above the floor indicator, the kind of thing you'd see in a horror movie. I almost opted for the stairs, but my bag was heavy and I was tired from the drive. The ride up was uneventful. The elevator groaned and shuddered as it moved, but it stopped on the 5th floor without incident. My room was at the far end of the hallway, directly across from a dusty window overlooking the street below. The room was fine, nothing special. The bedspread was a little faded, and the TV looked older than I was. But the bathroom was clean and the heater worked. After grabbing a quick dinner at a nearby diner, I returned to the hotel and settled in for the night. At around 1 a.m., I woke up, parched and craving something sweet. The vending machines were back in the lobby, so I grabbed my key card and stepped into the hallway. The 5th floor was strangely quiet. Most of the lights in the hall were dimmed, and I could hear the faint hum of the heater coming from somewhere behind the walls. I pressed the elevator button and waited. When the door opened, I stepped inside and pressed L for the lobby. The elevator groaned as it descended and the floor indicator flickered between the numbers, but instead of stopping at the lobby, it kept going. "Basement?" I muttered to myself, though I hadn't seen any buttons for a basement. The floor indicator showed a blank screen before flickering to -1. A chill crept up my spine. There wasn't supposed to be a basement, at least not one accessible from the elevator. The door slid open with a screech, revealing a pitch-black corridor. The air that wafted in was damp and cold, carrying a faint metallic tang like rust or blood. I jabbed the L button again, but the elevator didn't move. The door stayed open, as if waiting for me to step out. I leaned forward slightly, peering into the darkness. That's when I saw something. A faint movement, like a shadow at the far end of the corridor. The elevator lights flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw something or someone standing in the corridor. The door suddenly slammed shut and the elevator shot upward faster than it had any right to move. I stumbled against the wall, clutching the railing as the floor indicator flickered erratically. 1, 3, 6, 2, 5. When it finally stopped, the doors opened onto the 5th floor again. The hallway looked normal, exactly as I'd left it. I stepped out and ran back to my room. I couldn't sleep after that. I sat on the bed with the lights on, staring at my hotel room door as if expecting it to burst open. By the time dawn broke, I had convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was a glitch in the elevator, and my overactive imagination had done the rest. Determined to brush it off, I packed up and headed downstairs to check out. I wasn't going to risk the elevator again, so I took the stairs. As I passed the 3rd floor landing, I froze. The door to the 3rd floor was open, and through the crack I could see that the hallway beyond wasn't like the others. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, the floorboards exposed and warped. The lights in there flickered faintly. Something told me to keep moving, so I hurried the rest of the way down to the lobby. When I handed the receptionist my key card, I hesitated. This might sound strange, but is there a basement here? She froze mid-keystroke. Her polite smile faded. "No," she said carefully. "Why do you ask?" I told her about the elevator ride, about the dash 1 floor and the dark corridor. Her face turned pale. "You must have pressed the wrong button," she said quickly, avoiding my eyes. "There is no button for the basement," I countered. She glanced around nervously before lowering her voice. "You're not the first guest to mention that. But the thing is, there's no basement in this building. There never has been." I was shocked. This didn't make any sense. I thanked her, and on my way out, I passed the elevator again. This time, the doors were open. I glanced inside, my heart beating rapidly. There, faintly scratched into the brass panel next to the floor buttons, was something I hadn't noticed before. -1. It wasn't engraved by the manufacturer. It looked like it had been scratched in by hand. I didn't stick around to ask more questions. Whatever or whoever did that clearly doesn't have any good intentions. Since I was a kid, I've always been a deep sleeper. I could fall asleep in the middle of a thunderstorm or with a TV blaring in the background, no problem. But that all changed after my stay at the Briarwood Inn. I haven't had a good night's sleep since, and every time I close my eyes, I feel like I'm back in that cursed room. The Briarwood Inn was one of those charmingly old-fashioned hotels people rave about. I was on a road trip for work and needed a place to crash for the night, and Briarwood popped up with decent reviews. It was out of the way, quiet, and had that quaint, historic vibe. Perfect, I thought. The receptionist, an older man in a slightly rumpled uniform, handed me my key with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Room 312, he said. "Thanks," I said, hoisting my bag onto my shoulder. As I headed toward the elevator, he called out, "Oh, and if you need anything at all, call the front desk, no matter the time." It was a strange thing to say, but I didn't think much of it at the time. The room itself was nothing special. It had the same slightly worn carpet and overly floral bedding you'd expect from an older hotel. By 11 p.m., I was out cold. I woke up suddenly sometime in the early hours of the morning. It wasn't the kind of waking where you stretch and groggily roll over. It was sharp, immediate, like my body was on high alert. My eyes snapped open, and that's when I realized I couldn't move. I've had sleep paralysis before. It's terrifying but fleeting and usually no more than a few seconds of feeling trapped in your own body. But this time was different. The room was dead silent, yet I could hear faint whispers too low to make out. My eyes darted around the room, trying to find the source of the noise. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Then I noticed the shadows in the corner by the window. They were moving. Not like the flicker of tree branches or headlights passing by outside. These shadows moved with intention. My heart pounded in my chest, but my body wouldn't respond. I couldn't even scream. The whispers grew louder, and I realized they weren't coming from the corner. They were coming from all around me. Words in a language I couldn't understand. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadow, darker than the rest. It was tall and thin, with limbs unnaturally long. Its face, or where its face should have been, was blank and featureless. It moved closer. The figure bent down until it was level with me. Its featureless face was inches from mine. I couldn't breathe. My chest burned from the effort of trying to move, to scream, to do anything. Then it whispered, directly into my ear, "I see you." The next thing I knew, it was morning. I woke up drenched in sweat, with my heart racing like I'd just run a marathon. The room was bright, the shadows gone, and there was no sign of the figure. I convinced myself it had all been a nightmare, a horrifyingly vivid one, but just a dream nonetheless. That hope vanished when I noticed the bruises on my wrists, as though someone, or something, had been holding me down. I packed up and left without showering or even brushing my teeth. I just wanted to get out of there. When I handed the key back to the receptionist, he gave me a knowing look. "Sleep okay?" I hesitated. "Do you get a lot of complaints about room 312? He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "You're not the first, if that's what you're asking. Then why rent it out?" He looked genuinely apologetic. "The owner won't close it, says it's bad for business. But, if you don't mind me asking, what did you see?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Even now, just thinking about it makes my skin crawl. That night, after driving several hours and checking into a completely different hotel, I tried to sleep again. It happened almost immediately. As soon as I closed my eyes, I felt that same paralysis wash over me. I opened my eyes, and this time, I wasn't in the new hotel room. I was back in room 312, lying on that same bed with the same whispers surrounding me. And in the corner, the shadows began to move again. It's been months since my stay at the Briarwood Inn, and I haven't had a full night's sleep since. Every time I try, I end up back in that room, trapped in that same waking nightmare. No matter where I go, no matter how far I run, room 312 always finds me, and no one believes me. I'm about to go insane. I never believed in haunted objects. Ghost stories, sure. Old mansions and abandoned asylums, why not? But a haunted mirror? That always felt a little too cliché, the kind of thing you'd find in a low-budget horror movie. That was until I stayed at the Evermore Hotel. The Evermore was one of those grand, historic places you see in postcards. Sprawling marble staircases, stained glass windows, and antique furniture. I was there for a friend's wedding, and though the hotel was a little out of my price range, I figured I'd splurge for the weekend. It was just one night after all. I checked in late, sometime after 11 p.m., and the receptionist, a pale, wiry man with tired eyes, gave me a room on the 3rd floor. "Room 309, he said, sliding the old-fashioned key across the counter. When I reached the room, I was struck by how opulent it was. The bed was massive, with a thick, embroidered comforter. A chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting a soft golden glow. But what caught my attention most was the mirror. It was enormous, taking up almost the entire wall opposite the bed. The ornate gold frame looked ancient, its surface polished to a near-perfect shine. It felt out of place, too grand even for a hotel like this. I unpacked my things, took a quick shower, and fell into bed, too tired to do much else. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of the heater. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I felt a strange sensation, like I wasn't alone. I glanced at the mirror. There was a man in the reflection standing at the foot of my bed. I froze. The man was tall and indistinct, shrouded in shadow. I whipped my head around to look at the foot of the bed. Nothing. But when I looked back at the mirror, the man was closer. He hadn't moved in real life, only in the reflection. Every rational part of me screamed that this couldn't be happening. Mirrors don't work like that. This had to be some kind of waking dream or hallucination. He stepped closer, slowly, deliberately, until he was standing right beside me. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but I couldn't move. I was locked in place as if the reflection had taken hold of me. Then the man leaned down, his face, or what passed for a face, hovering inches from mine. His features were horrifying and distorted, like someone had taken a human face and twisted it into something unrecognizable. His hollow eyes stared into mine, and then it whispered, "Look closer." Everything blacked out and I woke up in the morning. I bolted upright in bed, breathing heavily. For a brief, blissful moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. But then I saw the mirror. The glass wasn't smooth anymore. It was cracked, jagged lines spiderwebbing across the surface. And there, faintly etched into the glass, were the words, "Look closer." I packed my bags in record time and hurried down to the lobby, desperate to check out and get as far away from the Evermore as possible. I got a partial refund and went on my way to my friend's wedding. I was still shocked, but it was nice to be far away from that hotel and that cursed mirror.